I'd like to welcome Mike Annable from the University of Florida. Mike is a professor in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UF, and he's a groundwater hydrologist. So I asked him to come and talk to us about aquifers in north central Florida so we can have a better understanding of how they work.
Thanks, Kathleen. As the title says, Florida's aquifer system. And so I'll talk a little bit about Florida aquifer system in this area, and talk a little bit about groundwater flow, how it flows and moves through the area. I've got a bit of discussion on impacts if you withdraw groundwater and use it for various purposes. What impacts are there? Who loses when you do that? We'll talk a little bit about that. Water budgets within that framework. I got a little bit of info on Keystone Heights, Brooklyn, Lake Brooklyn area, and then you'll be begging me to stop. Yes. Hydrologic cycle, the water cycle. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we know that water evaporates off the land surface, it evaporates off the ocean, it gets into the atmosphere, and it comes back down as precipitation. And so this cycle is critical to survival. We have to have that water coming in continuously, and it moves within the aquifer system, a lot of little recharge, and it will take different pathways through there, and it will discharge to springs, it will discharge to lakes, rivers, and all of that discharge is critical to maintaining those systems, maintaining those ecosystems that we're interested in. So that's a big theme I want to kind of keep pushing, is this concept of water balance. Water's coming in, water's going out, and we're going to probably change that balance. We're going to take some water out, use it, and maybe put it in a different place. But always recognize that we don't get rid of water, we just move it around. It goes in different places, maybe it evaporates, but eventually it's within the cycle, and that continues. So up here, we're sitting on the Florida aquifer system. Lucky for us, it's a very system with a lot of water stored in it. It's a system that yields a lot of water, so we're fortunate in that sense to have that available to us. And we're basically looking at sediments in the unconfined aquifer above the Hawthorne clay unit, this kind of orange-colored unit in there, and we're drawing our water predominantly from the Florida aquifer system. So keep that in mind. There's a superficial aquifer, there's a confining unit at Hawthorne. We'll see some more slides of that in a minute, and then the Florida aquifer over that. But you know, we get around 50 inches or so a year, although we've had years lately with a lot less than that. But if we were having this discussion out in Utah, they would think, why do you guys even think about a water problem? We get about 10 inches a year, you guys get 50 inches a year. Well, the difference is that our ecological systems require and survive on that water. They need that water to survive. So there's plenty of water for us. The question is there plenty of water for us and the rest of the environment? All right, so the Florida aquifer is huge. It starts up in mid-Georgia, where it pinches out up in there, and it continues to get thicker and thicker as we go down through the center of the state. And so I'll look at a cross-section, a slice, through the center of the state, and we'll look at a profile of that aquifer. The colors here just indicate that it gets thicker and thicker as we go down through the center of the state. And that's what we're looking at here, up in Georgia, where it starts, and all the way down to the Keys at the end of this map. We're about here in Gainesville, so we're sitting on some sands and gravels. That's a really thin layer you can barely see up there. Then the Hawthorne Formation that I mentioned is here. That's a confining unit that doesn't allow as much water to flow through it. And so one thing is it's very protective, or helps to protect the aquifer below for water quality reasons and water quantity. And we're lucky to have that here because it's not everywhere in the state. We're getting most of our water through this upper portion of the Florida aquifer, somewhere in here. And below that, there are thicker zones of that aquifer system. And as we go deeper, the water quality declines a little bit. But it extends all the way through the state, all the way down through the southern tip of the state. Now, one thing I always do when you look at these maps and think about a cross-section or a slice down through the center of the state, I always point out that you recognize that you may not be able to read this too well, but we're only going down about 1,000 feet or so to access our water. Well, this axis is about 400 miles long. So that's 400 miles through the state, and we're going only 1,000 feet in or so, maybe a fifth of a mile or so. Well, if you really did slice the state and take a look at it, this is what it looked like. That's the same picture, only it's now not exaggerated in the vertical sense. These are very thin aquifer systems that are very, very laterally extensive. And so we go into there and we pull our water from that thin zone. Always keep that in mind. Alachua County, looking a little bit closer. Alachua County and Gainesville in the center. We're going to look at a cross-section across the county from the A to A prime there. We're cutting to pass these slides on to me for GRU. So this is a much closer picture of what we were just talking about. Again, some of these sands, clays, unconsolidated materials on top. And the Hawthorne group sitting over here is above the Murphy Wellfield and above most of Gainesville. And then the Ocala Limestone, Avon Park, these are upper Florida aquifer formations that we're getting our water from. So Murphy Wellfield, pulling our water from those zones underneath that confined aquifer area. Now one thing you'll notice is that you go to the southwest as you're going towards Cedar Key, for example, you come off this escarpment off the top of the Hawthorne group, and then it's gone. Over here, if you were to pull water from that zone, you don't have that Hawthorne group sitting there. So it's a very important feature of where we are, that we're sitting on this Hawthorne group, and to the north and northeast of us as well. So that's an important feature that I mentioned. I brought in a piece of the Hawthorne formation for you to squeeze and get a hold of. It's a clay-rich zone that you think about how that feels. You can squeeze it and stuff. You can open it if you want, but it's pretty messy. Underneath that is the limestone formation, much harder rock. This is a rock core from that zone. And so one of the things that I stress or keep saying is that the presence of the Hawthorne unit up here is significant in how it modifies water flow in the aquifer system and also water quality as well. All right, so what happens in these systems? We have an unconfined aquifer, shallow aquifer, where recharged water coming through the ground surface enters in there, and it may move laterally, move over towards streams of discharge or towards pump wells or wetlands or lakes. And one of the things, reality is up here that the time scales for these flow paths, may be reasonably short, probably years in time frame. Whereas if the water is going to go through a confining unit, like that Hawthorne clay that I'm passing around, if it's to go through that, it's going to take a lot longer, move a lot slower, and get into these confined aquifer scenarios, and take much longer flow paths to their discharge point. Recognizing that the water does eventually discharge somewhere. It's very important to always keep that in mind. All right, so the limestone formation that we get our water from, it's not easy to see. So one place you can go is to a quarry. So west of town there are limestone quarries. And here's a nice picture of the upper Florida aquifer formation, the limestone conditions that we're pumping our water from. So imagine this is saturated with water and it's below us. It's below our feet here. And we drill a well down through here and we pump water out of that. The water is flowing through the formation itself, but it also may be flowing through fractures that are present in there. It could also be flowing through solution cavities. Some of these are quite small and hard to see. This one's a little bit bigger. Those are the type of features that obviously lead to sinkhole formation, collapse, and things like that. It's also the same kind of formations that the cave divers go in. So solution cavities, fractures, and flow through the porous media. All of those end up combining to yield a lot of water. So when we put wells in there, they're very productive and yield high quantities of water. All right, so we're using all this water, and this slide is really just meant to think about or compare how the system would behave before we start pumping water and then maybe afterwards. before, under pre-development conditions. Don't worry about the numbers as much, but the main point is that we would have had a lot of natural recharge, a lot of water moving into the aquifer formation, moving through this system, aquifer system, and discharging somewhere. Where's that water going? Discharging to streams, discharging to lakes, wetlands, potentially directly to the ocean. But all of it is coming in and through this kind of steady flow system. So what do? We come in and we start extracting water from there, pumping water out to use it, and we return a lot of that water, and we have a kind of a circulation here. Recognize most of the water we pull out, we end up putting back into the system. But we modify this natural system, and what we do most significantly is reduce potentially significantly the amount of water that's available to discharge to streams, lakes, rivers, and such. That's an important aspect that we have to keep in mind. We also may be mining that, reducing the storage over time. All right, so let's skip the slide. What are the impacts of this water withdrawal? The questions we always ask are, if we're pumping all this water out of the ground, are we having an impact on surface water features, the lakes and wetlands and streams in the area? Tampa Bay has dealt with this problem. If you're really interested in this, look up water impacts to wetlands in Tampa Bay area. There'll be a lot of information on this. One of the big reasons they have a huge problem is they don't have that Hawthorne formation that they're sitting on. So they're pumping directly, and the connection is much more direct between wetlands and lakes and the pumping. They had to stop pumping. They had to stop it and go to alternate sources, desalinization, surface water. I'm not going to go into any more details of that, but it's a very interesting study. So not too long ago, there was an article, will Jacksonville guzzle up all our water? Well, I don't think so, but the question really becomes, are they having an impact on water resources around the region? And a look at that is, one question that comes up is Lake Brooklyn. And a lot of you may have seen this lake. It's a very large system that's substantially reduced water level. So why is that? We ask the question, is it precip? Is it pumping? There's mine activities in the area. You look at a map like this, and Brooklyn is pretty devastated, but there's other lakes around there that are less impacted. So maybe it has to do with hydrogeology and how closely it's connected to the water system. So why do these lakes fluctuate like this? We have huge fluctuations. And so the answer is not that difficult to figure out. When it's in a declining pattern like this, it's falling because there's more water going out of the lake than going into the lake. So it's kind of a simple statement to say, but you can quote me on that. But water levels decline when the imbalance is like that. Anytime inflow doesn't equal outflow, then they're going to change. They may go up, they may go down, but that is really driven by the components going in and out of that lake. Inflows, biggest one, of course, precip, river flow, overland flow, and groundwater potentially. And outflows, evapotranspiration, lots of water leaving up, stream outflow, Brooklyn doesn't really have that. And groundwater outflow is a big component. This system is where I mentioned before, confining layer, vertical flow through there, and we have a lot of sinkhole features. You can see that in that map, but there's a strong connection between the aquifer and the lake in that case. And this is actually reflected in a simple water balance that was done. Precip and evap, they're kind of doing their thing, but the big keys are stream flow in and groundwater flow out. That is everything to Brooklyn. Stream flow in, if it's going, it comes up. Stream flow cuts off. We know when that happens, when it stops raining, and then this doesn't stop. The flow out the bottom just keeps going. That lake is strongly connected between the aquifer and the underlying formations. That's why it's much more dynamic than nearby lakes. This connection is a lot stronger. Oh, well, there's some notable exceptions to this issue of lake level fluctuations. So I'll just say we did have a lake called Alachua Lake, if you remember where it was. Many people around back then, I'm guessing. But back in the late 1800s, Payne's Prairie, of course, was a lake, and it declined in a matter of a few days. Why? Because the sinkhole feature opened up, the groundwater connection was a lot stronger, and the lake disappears. So it's not unheard of. And most of these fluctuations are driven by inputs to the water balance. Precip is really a big driver, but we do still have to ask the question, what about these groundwater withdrawals, human activities? Are they having some level of effect on that? And I think that sort of is summarized in these main points to be made. This last one, quantifying that, I didn't attempt to do that here. It's a big challenge. All right.